A multimillionaire PM sits on a golden chair to eat game while accepting the city's hospitality. Gorging himself with the city's gold cutlery, he takes the microphone to lecture the world on permanent austerity. While his city's neo-feudal fortress guards its synthetic wealth, its company cars and its private schools and its fraud, and its luxury goods, and its Lear jets, and its diamonds, and its junk. A world that worships money as its anti-social god. Fascism is capitalism plus violence, and facelift after facelift from democracy's charade can't change the character of the greedy and savage beast whose conscience is permanently mislaid. But in the peasants' revolt, the despondent raised their heads and set about devaluing the authorities' currency by their ceasing to believe in the strength of their oppressors, and with right on their side, they made history. And 700 years later, on November the 5th, outside Parliament, banners were unfurled, all of them singling out the same stubborn divisions, and adding, "Be afraid, be very afraid. Got money for war, but can't feed the poor. The corrupt fear us, the honest support us, the heroic join us. 10,000 people have died because of the cuts." One of them reads, "Parasite MPs get free energy, then make pensioners freeze to death." The crowd moves to Trafalgar Square, then down the Mall, and someone calls, "Off with their heads," with each breath. And then the palace, the embodiment of the wealth gap, with its 600 rooms, is attacked. Curtains twitch as palace flunkies peer out nervously, worried by seeing their police pushed back. The stone-faced building is hit by Guy Fawkes' night rockets, and as each one scores a bullseye, the crowds cheer. A homeless woman at the palace gates calls out pleadingly, "We're poor." The crowds echo her, but with more defiance, "We're poor." "Whose palace?" "Our palace," they shout up through the gilded railings, and "Why are you worthless parasites so rich?" Then suddenly, Wat Tyler's London comes edgily alive, thanks to a 700-year-old itch. A Stone Roses fan sings, "Tear me apart and boil my bones. I'll not rest till they've lost their throne," as a missile snuffs out a palace light. My aim is true, my message is clear. It's curtains for you, my royal dears. Then someone nearby shouts, "Heads on pikes, heads on pikes." Wat Tyler's an English folk myth, like Robin Hood, except that the evidence for his existence is authentic, and Tyler was much more political, wanting to change the system's very essence. William Blake drew Wat Tyler, and wrote on his engraving that he'd drawn a likeness of Tyler's spectre in the act of striking a city taxman, and who knows that Tyler won't strike the city again from across the ether. Blake despised the state and restored the Lord's Prayer with what he believed was its proper translation, rather than the mealy-mouthed travesty still used in churches and penned by a Tory theologian, Dr. Thornton. In tune with Tyler and Ball, Blake declared it should read, "Give us the bread that is our due and right, by taking away money, or a price, or tax, upon what is common to all in thy kingdom." The University of Berkeley in California conducted a series of tests, showing people in expensive cars were less likely to come to a halt for pedestrians. And tests showed if the richer test subjects were left with a jar of sweets for the experiment, and if they were told they'd been reserved for children, it was found there was no end to their arrogance. For the richest test subjects would pilfer the most sweets, more sweets than the subjects who were poor. And again, when the rich subjects played a game of chance, it was the rich ones who bumped up their scores. For the rich feel entitled to cheat, as it's their right to win. And when you hear them boast that money talks, or when you hear them insist that generosity's for idiots, then you wonder if it's not time for the pitchforks. The peasants' revolt went on to inspire mass uprisings all over Europe. By putting the self-serving in its crosshairs, it was giving the excluded hope. The rebels came close to overthrowing the system, just one dagger's thrust from victory. But with money an illusion, and power a deception, a revolt can still change the scenery. In the evening, the divine bandit John Ball said, "Men will dream of the day. They will dream of an egalitarian state of nature, and of nothing stood in its way."